On my very first day inside Ramla Prison, the humiliation began. They forced me to remove the pins that held my hijab in place. Something so small, yet so symbolic. It felt like they were trying to tear away not just fabric, but my very dignity. After my first court session, a female guard stopped me. With a cold, lifeless expression, she said, "Wristbands are forbidden here. They're extra clothing." Before I could respond, she ripped them off and tossed them straight into the garbage can in front of me. I tried to remain calm, convincing myself I could survive without them. My sleeves were tight enough. I thought, it's fine, I can manage. But I had no idea. This was just the beginning of a much darker ordeal. That same night, after a grueling day on the prison transport, I had just laid down, desperate for a moment of rest. Suddenly, I was summoned for interrogation. I rushed to get ready. My socks were still wet from washing, but I put them on anyway. When the guard shackled my feet, she looked down at me with mockery and whispered, "When you come back, you'll take off your socks." And she meant it. Hours later, after midnight, I returned exhausted, broken from questioning. She was waiting. Without hesitation, she grabbed my socks, ripped them away, and threw them into the trash. 10 days into my detention, I found myself completely isolated, locked in a small cell. No human contact, just me, my prayers, my Quran, my whispered supplications, and my endless tears to Allah. I tried to hold on to patience. I tried to stay composed. While the isolation ward was filled with screaming, cursing, and chaos, I forced myself into calmness. I thought, if I can stay close to Allah, they cannot break me. But then came the day of my 5th court session. When I returned from the hearing, something happened that would shatter even the strongest heart. The prison officer looked at me and declared, "From today onward, you are forbidden from wearing your hijab and your jilbab inside this section." I froze. My mind searched for words, for arguments, for anything, but I was speechless. I had always been strong and always refused to cry in front of them. But this time, my tears betrayed me. They poured down uncontrollably. "No, you cannot do this. I will never remove it. You cannot strip me of this." But he gave a command. The female guard came forward and yanked my hijab off my head. Then, in front of them, they ordered me to remove my jilbab, or they would tear it off by force. Shaking, humiliated, and broken, I had no choice. For the first time since childhood, I stood uncovered. When they locked me back into my cell, I collapsed in tears. I was 40 years old. I had worn my hijab since the age of 7. No man outside my family had ever seen me without it since I was 15. That night, I cried like never before. I screamed. I called out, "Where are you, Salahuddin? Where are you, O Muttasim? O Allah, O Islam, where are you?" But only the cold, merciless walls of my cell answered back. For hours I wept, until finally I prayed without my hijab, without my jilbab, begging Allah to let me sleep before my heart shattered completely. The next day at noon, male guards entered my cell to search it. I broke again. I begged them, "My hijab and jilbab are part of me. Stripping them away is like ripping off my skin. My prayer isn't valid without them. I cannot stand in front of men like this. Please." But my cries fell on deaf ears. Then, without explanation, they moved me to another cell. For a moment, I thought, maybe this will be better. But when I entered, I realized I had been thrown into a nightmare. The cell was barely 2 meters wide. Sewage water covered the floor. Dead cockroaches lay beneath the mattress. The toilet overflowed with filth and waste. When I tried to flush it, the pump roared non-stop for hours, filling the cell with a deafening sound. Above me, cameras stared directly at my sleeping area, at the toilet, leaving me no privacy. The bathroom door was glass, fully transparent. And my cell stood directly in front of the guard's office. Every step in and out, every gaze, they watched me. It wasn't a cell in a bathroom, it was a bathroom disguised as a cell. That night I prayed without hijab, without jilbab, without even prostration. because the ground was too filthy to touch with my forehead. At dawn, they returned my clothes so I could appear in court. I arrived there pale, exhausted, and drained from nights of forced wakefulness, endless crying, and humiliation. I told my lawyer everything, how they stripped me, how they threw me into filth, how for the first time in my life men saw me without my hijab, how I prayed on a filthy floor without sujood. When the lawyer presented my story before the judge, the courtroom fell into heavy silence. Shock, outrage, disbelief. The judge finally issued an order: return her hijab and jilbab, do not strip them again, move her back to her original cell. But when I returned to the prison, the torment continued. They ignored the court order. Again, they forced me to remove my hijab and jilbab. That was the moment I made my decision. No more silence. I stood in my cell and began shouting. I shouted and I shouted and I shouted for 4 hours straight. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You will not strip me of my faith. You will not strip me of my dignity. Finally, the prison director himself came down. Breathing heavily, he asked what I wanted. I held up the court decision in my hand and said, "This is my right. You will obey it. You will never take my hijab from me again." And in that moment, he had no choice but to comply. That day, I learned something unforgettable. They can strip my clothes, they can lock me in filth, they can chain my body, but they can never, ever strip my soul. They can never chain my faith. They can never imprison my dignity. I am Khadija Khweis, and I will never surrender what Allah has given me, not even if it costs me my freedom. This is not just a prison story. It is the story of resilience, faith, and a woman who refused to be broken. And so, after days and nights of humiliation, tears, and silent prayers, I finally realized something deeper than freedom itself. Prison wasn't just walls and iron bars. Prison was a test, a battlefield of the soul. They wanted to break me, to strip away not just my clothes, but my identity, my faith, my very existence. But every time they forced me into darkness, I discovered a new light within. Every time they silenced my words, my prayers grew louder in my heart, and every tear that fell from my eyes became a weapon sharper than their chains. I understood then, true freedom is not walking outside the prison gates. True freedom is standing unbroken in front of oppression, declaring, "You will never take my soul. My dignity belongs to Allah alone." Yes, they stripped my hijab. Yes, they humiliated me. But what they didn't know is that the more they tried to crush me, the stronger I became. And one day, when these prison walls are nothing but dust, my story will remain. A story for every woman who refuses to bow. A story for every believer who chooses faith over fear. A story that says they can chain the body, but never the spirit. That is my testimony, my fight, my truth. And if you're listening now, know this: your strength does not come from this world. It comes from the one above. Hold on to it, guard it, never let them take it from you. Because in the end, it is not the prison that defines us. It is what we carry inside our hearts.